Hey, is that folk music that you play there? What is that? How do you call that folk music?
I think it was Studs Terkel who asked Big Bill Brunzi, did he consider his blues music to be folk music? And Big Bill says, well, never heard no horse.
Don't hesitate. It could be your ticket to a new tomorrow.
wonderful.
Thank you.
The show is Horses Sing None of It. My name is Ralph Litwin, and our guest today is Natalia Paruz, the Saw Lady,
Thank
residing
you.
in New
Hi,
York
Ralph.
City. How you do?
I'm doing great, thank you. How are you?
That was wonderful. I'm
Thank
fine.
you.
How does a beautiful young woman like yourself become the Saw Lady?
Well, it's not something that I set out to do. I did not plan this. It just sort of happened. I was actually a dancer. I was a trainee with the Martha Graham Dance Company.
Wow.
And one day I was crossing the street and I was hit by a taxi cab, and that put an end to my dance career.
Yeah.
So I was climbing the walls trying to figure out what am I going to do with my life. You know, my whole life I've just been like, okay, I'm going to be a dancer. I didn't look right or left. So I didn't know what to do. And to cheer me up, my parents took me on a trip to Austria. They took me to Austria because that's where the movie The Sound of Music was filmed. And that was my favorite movie when I was a kid. So while we were at Austria, we went to see a show for tourists. And in it, there was a guy playing a saw. And that was the first time that I've ever encountered such a thing. I didn't even know such a thing existed before that, and I was mesmerized. And I just felt like I have to try to do this. I was mesmerized because, first of all, the sound is so different, but also it's very visual. You know, it's one of the only instruments that when you play it, the entire instrument moves, not just the bow. Like if you think of a violin, the violin doesn't move, it's the bow that moves. But here, the entire instrument creates shapes in the air, and it's sort of like a ballet. So since I came from the visual world of dance, I was attracted to this. And so I went backstage, and I asked the guy who was playing the saw if he would teach me how to play. And he said no. And of course I said, I'll pay you, tell me how much you want for a lesson. No. He said, you don't need a saw player. You don't need a teacher. Just pick up a saw, any type of saw, and imitate what you've seen me do on stage, and you'll figure it out. And today, in retrospect, I know that he wasn't just brushing me off, because actually the tradition of playing a saw is that you figure it out on your own. You see somebody else performing, that inspires you, you go home, you pick up a saw, and you figure it out. If you do go to a teacher, there might be a chance that other saw players would kind of look down at you like, oh, you couldn't figure it out on your own, how you had to go to a teacher. So actually that saw player in Austria did me a huge favor by refusing to take my money and teach me. And so I came back home, I borrowed a saw, a regular saw that has been used for woodwork, and I imitated what I've seen that guy do on stage, and sure enough, I figured out how to make 6 notes out of that old handsaw. But 6 notes, you can't really do that much with that. So that saw was rusty, and I thought that it's probably the rust. The rust takes away from the sound. So I went to the local hardware store, and I tried out all the different saws that they had at the store. And it was really funny because the owner of the hardware store, he came by to the aisle where I was, and he was furious. He was like, who's whistling in my store? And I was like, no, I'm sorry, nobody's whistling in your store. I'm just checking out your saws. And he looked at me like I'm nuts. Like, this is how you try a saw? You know, he's used to carpenters, like figuring out how sharp it is. But he realized I was going to buy an expensive saw, so he was fine with it. And sure enough, a new saw, no rust, it had 2 octaves on it. And with 2 octaves, you can already play music. And that's how I got my start.
Great story.
Thank you.
Why don't you give us another tune? Tell us what you're going to play.
I will play a tune that my husband wrote, Scott Munson, and it's called When I'm Alone. Thank you.
Beautiful. I said to Alice that the saw sounds to me like a human voice, and she said, no, it sounds like a ghost.
That's true, that's true. It does sound a little bit like both. A lot of people, when they hear me play, before seeing me play, they all think it's a singer. And then they go looking for the singer, and then they find me, and they're surprised.
We should tell folks how they can get more information about your recording and your performances.
I have a website, sawlady.com, and in it there is a lot of information about the history of the saw and all the different saws that were ever made especially for music. I've done a lot of research about these things, and also my recordings. They're available both in CD form as well as in MP3 downloads with today's technology. And also, once a year I organize a saw players gathering. I've been doing it for quite a few years now, and each time there is a different guest of honor. It's the saw player who has traveled the furthest away to attend the gathering. So we've had a saw player from Japan, from India, from Canada. So if anybody is interested in joining the saw players gatherings, either as a saw player participating or as a member of the audience, please just contact me through my website, and I'll send you all the details.
Great. So they can write you, email you at
Email,
sawlady@sawlady.com.
That's right, sawlady@sawlady.com.
Beautiful. Now all these pieces are by your husband. They're composed by your husband.
That's right. Yeah, they're all composed
Scott Munson.
by Scott. All these pieces that I'm playing here today, they're all on our second album.
What was the name of the first piece you did?
The first piece is called Lame sonore, which is simply musical saw in French. It just sounds so much nicer in French. And that was actually the first piece that Scott ever wrote for the saw. So it's the first piece on our album.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Now I think you're going to give us a number on the musical bells, the cowbells.
Yeah, that's another instrument that I play. It's also an instrument that I came across totally by chance at that same trip to Austria. As we were traveling, we had the car windows rolled down, and we were walking by, we were traveling by all these meadows with cows roaming all over the place, as they do in Europe. And I noticed that each cow has a bell on its neck. And I also noticed that as we travel, the sound of the bells varies. It's not always the same pitch. One herd of cows may have a low pitch, another herd might have a high pitch. So I said to my parents as a joke, wouldn't it be cool to collect a whole octave of these bells and play music on them? And then we started coming by all these tourist shops where they actually sell those cowbells. So I started checking out all the sounds, and I collected at first just one octave. And at the hotel, I tried playing Happy Birthday to You on them, and it worked. So then I thought, well, maybe I'll try to do something a little more than that. And my husband's birthday was coming up, so I thought I would do a surprise. Every time that he left the house, that's when I practiced, so that he wouldn't know about it. And what I learned to play was a little piece by Mozart on the cowbells. And at his birthday party, I took out the bells and I played, and everybody liked it. So that's when I thought, maybe I have something here. So then little by little, I expanded my set. At first, I just have one octave. Today, I have 65 pitched cowbells. 3 octaves are European cowbells, and 2 octaves are American cowbells. The American cowbells are a little different. They're shaped a little different, but the sound is basically similar. This set actually was made especially for playing music. In the old days, up till about 100 years ago, they actually made cowbells pitched for music making. They don't make it anymore, unfortunately, and I was really lucky to find this set. It's very difficult to find these days. And this set was actually, it belonged to a children's choir in a church in New Zealand. And they played it during church services. And then the lady who ran the choir passed away, and they tried to keep going with the bell choir, but it didn't work for them, so then they sold the bells, and eventually these bells made their way to me. So I feel very fortunate. And I will play, attempt to play, I should say, because it's not that easy playing cowbells, because unlike a piano keyboard, for example, where you can always expect the bells to be in the same, I mean the notes to be in the same place. The bells, if I, heaven forbids, in the middle of playing, I would misplace a bell, I would never find it again, or sometimes bells topple over, or sometimes there's a domino effect and they all play. So I never know before I start playing the bells if everything is actually going to go according to plan. So we will see how it works today. And the piece that I would like to attempt to play is called Delancey Street Rag, composed by my husband Scott. And that's it.
You ready for me to press play?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I got so excited I forgot to press stop. That was great.
Oh, thank you.
It's lovely to see that your dance training did not go totally to waste with all your performances.
Yeah, you see, it's incredible how things work. I mean, you know, at first I was so devastated that I wouldn't be able to be a dancer, but today, in retrospect, it might sound weird, but I'm actually grateful for that car accident, because if it didn't happen, I would still be a dancer today, and I would have missed out on all the fun. So it worked out good.
We have about 4.5 minutes left, you wanted to know.
Okay, well, maybe I'll do one more song, which is called Changes, and also composed by Scott.
Thanks so much for joining us on Horses Sing None of It.
Oh, thank you for having me here.
Our pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thanks
Thank you.
again for being on our show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me here.
And for more information, people can go visit www.sawlady.com.
That's right.
I think we have time for a little bit more music.
Should I do the one that's going to be under the credits?
Yep.
Okay. This is called Clover Hill, and it is sort of it is showing our love to Ireland. Describes the meadows and the hills in Ireland.